Hello there. Welcome back to the channel, and this is Nerd World, and in today's episode we are looking at Captain Balthazar Edison, the man who couldn't have a more awesome name even if he'd picked it for himself. Commander in Starfleet, commanding officer of the USS Franklin, one of Earth's earlier prototype deep space interstellar vessels, the precursor of the NX class Enterprise. This ship would be lost to Starfleet under mysterious circumstances not to be explained until 100 years later, and only in an alternate timeline we sometimes refer to as a Kelvin timeline. This man may have been one of the most underrated captains in Starfleet if it wasn't for his fall to, well, evil. I don't really know where that sentence was going. He was a badass. Let's get into his story. Edison began his career in the Military Assault Command Operations known as MACO. This was a combined organization that had unified Earth's previous military organizations, which were separated by nation states, into one coherent military force. He had served in this military in the capacity of a trainer, combat officer and soldier. He had been promoted to the rank of major and commanded his own soldiers in battle against both the Xindi and against the Romulans. And I have questions about the Xindi thing, which I'll get to. But with that said, he, at the founding of the Federation, discovered that the MACOs were going to be dissolved. Now, although we do learn later that Starfleet does have a Marine Corps, it's a very limited organization, and clearly Edison didn't end up in it. As he saw it, he was put out to pasture and given what was almost to him an honorific command of the USS Franklin. For all of its abilities, the Franklin was by this point an older ship, hardly state-of-the-art, and would go on limited missions. Although he harbored bitter resentment towards the Federation for what he saw as weakness, he did not see unity, harmony, and the betterment of all different species working together for mutual coexistence as actually a form of strength. He saw it as a weakness, a derived, idiotic concept, and he saw him being made a captain in Starfleet as nothing more, as I said, than him being put out to pasture, with his military training and skills not being put to their full potential. He was a soldier at heart, not an explorer. And although he did fall back on his military training quite often during his various missions he executed for Starfleet, he was still a very successful officer within Starfleet. It wasn't until the mid-part of the latter half of the 22nd century that his ship would befall a great disaster. It would be displaced through space by a wormhole, a clearly unstable one that spat his ship out and forced it to crash land on an M-class planet called Altamid. He was one of only 3 survivors of his crew, and although he sent out a distress call, he was so far from Federation space, no one would receive it, and no one local, if they even picked it up, which is unlikely considering the location of Altamid, ever responded to it. Feeling abandoned, he ultimately became more and more delusional and more obsessed with the destruction of the Federation. He wanted to prove that the Federation was folly. He wanted to destroy it, seeking out the ultimate weapon that had been created by the previous inhabitants of Altamid. On this world he found a drone workforce, a fleet of warp-capable fighters, and, more importantly, energy transference technology, very conveniently left intact and operational by the previous inhabitants, which allowed an individual to drain the life from another person to extend their own. A side effect of this technology was to mutate his body. Although Balthazar Edison started out as human, he would mutate into something a little other than human, as he fed mostly on the energies of non-human species. It wasn't until he put humans into the machine to draw the life essence from them, but he began to take on a human appearance once again. And using that appearance, he would attempt to infiltrate the Yorktown space station and destroy it, killing countless Federation citizens in the process. The fall from grace of this man was a tragedy and shows that humanity is not the evolved race it sometimes wants to be, but the fact that it wants to be does prove that there's still potential and something in it for us. We're not just a violent child race. Edison was in some ways both the best and the worst of humanity. A great soldier, competent, loyal to his officers, but ultimately couldn't accept a change to a more peaceful existence in the form of the Federation. Starfleet is not a truly pure scientific research gathering agency. It does have a military aspect. It's just that Edison wasn't interested in a military aspect. He wanted to be a soldier, not the commanding officer of a vessel of exploration. And that brings me back to my earlier thought. And this bugged me about this film. As you may know from one of my previous videos, I'm not the biggest fan of Star Trek Beyond. It has so many plot holes, and this one's only a tiny one. But it is a plot hole all the same. And basically, how did he fight in the Xindi Wars? Exactly. Because the Xindi War was realistically fought by one probe that attacked Earth and blew itself up before anyone had a chance to shoot it down, and one Earth ship that was sent against the Xindi into the Expanse. And he, to my knowledge, was not one of the Makos aboard Enterprise. So when did he fight Xindi? When the larger Xindi planet killer came to attack Earth, for reasons best known only to Starfleet, maybe they were having a nap, the only person that turned up to bloody resist it was an unarmed civilian space station and an Andorian combat cruiser. Where was Starfleet? The Earth was meant to be on high alert, for crying out loud. So this guy's fighting against the Xindi. Was there did we miss a battle? Did we blink and miss Starfleet attacking the Xindi weapon? I'm pretty sure Starfleet would have had ships in place. Earth did have planetary defenses of some description, whether it be ground-based, fighters, suborbital weapon systems, orbital weapon systems, minefields. It had something. We never got to see any of it, but they clearly must have had something. And I'm assuming Edison was part of it. That's the only conclusion I can come to, and it's bugged me since watching the film, because I understand the Romulan Wars. I get that. I don't get when did he fight the Xindi. I don't get that. But that little niggling thing aside, we're going to say, and my final thoughts on this matter, I actually really like the character, but then again, it's really hard to dislike Idris Elba in anything that he's in. I really did enjoy this character. Even though I didn't overly enjoy the film, I really did like the story of Edison. I liked the idea of this war hero come out to pasture Starfleet captain who gets lost in space and becomes the very enemy that he had spent his life fighting, no better than the Romulans or the Xindi that had attacked Earth. And although his goal probably wasn't the destruction of Earth, he was really trying to prove a point. His point was flawed, and it was a tragic story. It's almost Shakespearean, almost, but I'm giving the writers of Beyond far too much credit, but I'm not going to rag on Beyond because it does have its good aspects, and this is one of them. Balthazar Edison was certainly one of the better characters in that film. He was, like many Star Trek villains, unlike people like Kai Wynn, Gul Dukat, let's face it, awesome, Seska, awesome, but he suffers from this problem that a lot of Star Trek villains rather have, and it's underdevelopment and underutilization. But all the same, he was a fantastic villain with a very tragic and fairly compelling and interesting backstory to him as an individual. And although we don't know his birth date, we do know he was human. He was born on Earth in Pennsylvania, and we know that he was a soldier at heart. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's sometimes almost demonized in Star Trek for someone to be a soldier, as if being a soldier is a bad thing. I don't think that's the intention, but sometimes it comes across that way. With all that said, anyway, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, tell me your thoughts on Star Trek Beyond, because on a rare one for me, I've shared them. I don't like this film. I just can't love it. I can watch it, I can deal with it, I just can't love it. But I do love Balthazar Edison. He is awesome. And thank you for watching. Bye bye.